Well, we're moving right along to the weirdest, most disgusting season of Channel Zero that also happens to be the best. This is Butcher's Block.
I was wondering if I could talk to you about my sister.
Butcher's Block is directed by Arkasha Stevenson. It stars Olivia Luchardi, Holland Roden, Krisha Fairchild, and the late Rutger Hauer. And it's a loose adaptation of a series of no-sleep stories called Search and Rescue. I say loosely because this is a mostly original story that really only takes the most iconic imagery from the Search and Rescue series, the staircases in the woods, and otherwise does its own thing. It tells the story of a young social worker and her schizophrenic sister who, after suffering an extreme family trauma, moved to a new city with a dark history plagued by disappearances. Now this is by far my favorite season of Channel Zero. It's the most cinematic, it's by far the weirdest, it's got some of the best themes, the best monsters, and it's stylistically inspired by David Lynch and Twin Peaks. It explores horror in the mundane, and it uses that horror to delve into much deeper issues involving systemic failings, class warfare, mental illness, and police corruption. So yeah, that's my stance on this season, and none of you will change my mind. The funny thing is, in most discussions I see on the matter, people list this season as their least favorite, and I do not understand that viewpoint at all. Most of the reasons I see for disliking it are the fact that they change too much from the source material and, yeah, that's the point. There is very little in common with Search and Rescue outside of the staircases in the woods, and honestly, I'm fine with that. The Search and Rescue series is great in short form, but it doesn't really translate well to a long-form television series. It's just a series of vignettes with the only real thing tying them together being, hey, here's a creepy story about something that happened to me in the woods while I was working in the park. So adapting that into a 6-episode TV series would have been difficult, and I think Butcher's Block is really adventurous in the way that it chooses to completely diverge from the source material and do its own thing, its own very weird thing. So once again, recap time. Alice and Zoey are sisters who move to a new city after their mother suffers a psychotic break and stabs Zoey, only for Zoey to soon after fall victim to schizophrenia herself. Alice is afraid of falling victim to the same disease, since 2 of her family members have it, and takes a job as a social worker trying to help people who the system let fall through the cracks. But when a child in her charge mysteriously disappears, she and Zoey end up getting pulled into a world of gods and cannibals and butlers made of meat. The stairs in the woods lead to another world inhabited by the Peaches, a family that used to run the city before they too mysteriously disappeared. And they're the ones responsible for all the residents of the city vanishing. The Peaches made a deal with a Lovecraftian entity called the Pestilent God and provide him with child sacrifices in exchange for immortality. Unfortunately, immortality has its side effects, and you get real hungry for human flesh when you can live forever. And for decades, the Peaches have been stealing and eating people from Butcher's Block, the city's sacrifice zone where the system has just stopped caring. Zoey gets roped into this world when she meets Joseph Peach, the family's patriarch, and he heals her schizophrenia, but that has its side effects, and she ends up hungering for human flesh. Rather than eating human flesh, she ends up eating bits of her own leg because it's easier than eating other people. Meanwhile, Alice is scared because the looming threat of her own possible schizophrenia is constantly around the corner, and she ends up making a deal with the Peaches, sacrificing her own humanity in order to never have mental illness afflict her. That doesn't go so well. If that doesn't sum it up, this season has a lot happen in it. And it's all paced flawlessly. It starts out creepy and intriguing, and then slowly ramps up the insanity every minute until you get to the ends of episode 1 and 2, which present you with a meat butler and a tiny man with a mallet and brain surgery at dinner, and that dinner being a cannibalistic feast including the arm of a woman whose daughter was taken. Then you get to the following episode and things get even more insane, with Twisty Troy skittering around as the physical representation of Alice's looming schizophrenia, which then turns into a 7-foot-tall nightmare monster shambling around with Alice's head made out of paper mache. Then Zoey starts eating her own leg, and then you get a horrible child-eating Lovecraftian god wearing a stylish red cloak that houses the entire universe inside it, and the head of a stag, but made out of the texture of constantly boiling and shifting mercury. Basically what I'm saying is this season is absolutely insane, and it's incredible. The season's also shockingly funny. There are a whole lot of really surreal moments that border on absurdity, but because of the environment they're set in, you can't tell if it's funny or creepy. There's also an amazing running debt with a student loan collector, which ends in the best punchline in the world with Alice eating him. There truly isn't a single moment in the season that I can't call memorable. And a huge part of that is due to its style. It's got vibes of Candyman and Twin Peaks, in the way that it presents its horror combined with intense themes of systemic oppression and mental illness. The production design is absolutely incredible. From the massive cathedral-like mansion of the Peaches' summer house, to the streets of Butcher's Block that are covered in these massive graffiti faces that give you the vibe of the Peaches being ever present and always watching. It's all immaculate and works incredibly well, especially when every frame lends to this beautiful juxtaposition where you're being presented with grotesque imagery but with an absolutely beautiful aesthetic. Speaking of grotesque imagery, this season dials the horror up to 11. The season's gross as hell, it's gory as hell, and it's got some of the best monster designs in the entire series. The Meat Servant, Smart Mouth, the Butcher, Father Time, the Pestilent God, they're all incredibly memorable and incredibly well designed and done, I think, 99% practically. I do want to pay special attention to the Pestilent God though, because this is one of the only times I've seen a truly incomprehensible creature put to screen properly. The way this thing is designed, its lack of any discernible form, the way the visuals of its face are constantly moving and warping in a way that you can't quite make out what you're seeing, it really helps cement the idea that you're viewing something from outside our comprehension of reality. And that level of just sheer bizarreness is really what helps Arkasha Stevenson's vision of a David Lynch-style Channel Zero season. There's a distinct way that Lynch presents horror, having it strike you in the most mundane situations, showing you things you'd never expect to see in ways you would never expect to see them, creating this really intricate sound design that just instinctually ramps up the dread in you. The way that the sound design for Father Time, the schizophrenia monster, is handled in this season is incredible. There's always these whispers that are gradually increasing as it gets closer. There's these low droning groans, I guess. I don't know how to describe them, but they're the most bizarre sound ever. And it really just makes this thing terrifying. It's already uncanny to look at, but the sound design that accompanies it really brings it to the next level. There are scenes throughout the season that feel straight out of Twin Peaks: The Return, with the Butcher's true form being pretty much identical to the reveal of Sarah Palmer in Twin Peaks: The Return. I also want to take a second to praise the score for this season. I don't know if Jeff Russo did the score again. I couldn't find any info on who the composer was, but the score for Butcher's Block is phenomenal. The season is underscored by this haunting, gothic score that really is reminiscent of Philip Glass's Candyman score, and it actually ends up using an actual Philip Glass piece during Alice's bloody baptism. But honestly, I think the thing that I most appreciate about the season is just the depths that it reaches. In addition to all its themes, there's a distinct tragedy at the heart of its story. Zoe, who's cured of schizophrenia that she's dealt with for years, ends up choosing to accept it and take it back and live with it rather than lose her humanity. While Alice, who started off not mentally ill, is so terrified of losing her mind that she gives up her own humanity willingly, only to then lose her mind when she stares into the cloak of the pestilent god, ending up exactly where she was afraid of ending up. And it's this beautiful, self-fulfilling prophecy that ties everything up in this nice little bow, and it's wonderful. Honestly, I could ramble about the season for another half hour, but I'm not going to do that because I still have one more season to talk about. Instead, I'm just going to recommend you watch it yourself. Like the other seasons, it's streaming on Shudder, and my words cannot do it enough justice. I'm going to say that Butcher's Block is a genre masterpiece. It's a stellar watch if you're a fan of gore and cosmic horror and auto-cannibalism, and we've got one more season of Channel Zero to go in this love fest, so stay tuned. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this channel and you want to see more, click down there, like, comment, subscribe. There's a Patreon link down in the description if you want to donate to it, help this channel grow, make new, better quality content. You'd be like all these cool people right here. I would really appreciate it. There's all sorts of cool new rewards, anything from access to my private Discord server to gifts sent right to your door once a month by me. If any of that interests you, please consider donating. Even $1 would help. I'd really appreciate it. But even if you don't, thank you so much for watching anyway. And I'll see you all very soon.